There's a few more coming, but I think we'll get started for those of you that are here nice and early. So, hey, thank you for joining me this morning. So this is quite exciting. This is the first in a series of sales strategy webinars that I'm going to be hosting over the coming months. And the first one is obviously creating a winning methodology, which in my opinion is the first one, which kind of seems a little strange, the best one, kind of seems a little strange to put the best in first. But I think if you can nail this, you can nail a lot of other stuff too. So just a reminder, this is being recorded and will be available for you afterwards. There's also a few others in different time zones, especially Australia, that felt this was a bit early. So they'll be getting that later in the day. Even if you haven't defined your methodology, you will already be selling. There's no two ways about it. You sell regardless of whether you have a defined process. And I'm sure you're selling well. Of course you will be. And you're obviously interested in betterment because you're here. So today is not about to tell you how to do your job. Anyone that's worked with me before knows that that's not how I work. It's about you reflecting on what your current process is for your sales and then looking for betterment for you and your team. So as you go through this, I want you to take the time to reflect and just think about your own process and the way in which you run at it. So, I encourage you, if you've got a pen and paper or take notes on your phone, just, as we go through, just think about some stuff and just write it down, even if it's not in a particularly defined way. And of course, there will be recording available. So, look, let's crack into it. So first of all, for those of you who have not worked with me before, I have a company called Intentional Influencing. I've had that company now for about 5.5 years. And we work with teams, especially in the high performing space. So that could be any kind of team, but mainly where my passion and love lies is in amongst sales teams to help them grow, sales teams or sales leaders. So that's what my company does, and really, as I said before, it's around encouraging betterment and self-awareness as opposed to telling you how to do your job. There's a little bit about me, a little bit of background to me. You'll see there that I work with a variety of different industries. So I'm not a specialist in anybody's industry, but I am a generalist and have a set of skills that works mainly in the strategy space with teams, as I said before, around high performing. And I've also created some online training programs as well, which I'm going to talk to you about a little bit later. Done significant learning and development in the sales and high performing space as well. And that's my family. We're going to just, the agenda for today, I'm just going to run through a little bit of background, lessons I've learned, things that I've observed, a few perspectives that I actually have, and then we're going to work through a framework and methodology, the process. So if you've got any questions along the way, please feel free to put them in the chat. Otherwise, I will leave some time at the end for questions. And of course, as you know, you're welcome to engage directly with me if you have any questions or any specifics. And of course, when you're done with your methodology, I'd love to see it. So let's get going. So my lessons. So in fact, one of my team members is on here today. So back in 2007, we had one of those R words happen, one of those recessions hit. And I had an amazing team, a high-performing team. They were great. They were selling well. We had a good product. We had loyal clients. Everything was absolutely perfect. But for the first time, we noticed that some of our clients were actually wanting more. And we seemed to be missing the mark and seemed to be losing a few sales that we perhaps thought were quite, were ours to have. So we needed to sort of start to rethink the way in which we were doing things, our process, and, how could we do things a little bit differently? Because obviously we wanted to retain our market share. Didn't want to lose any share throughout a recession. And we were probably winging it a wee bit, but then so were our competitors. But then, what's the old saying, without competitors, there's no need for strategy. So we did have to sort of dig in, and we decided we probably needed to know a little bit more about some of our customers and the way in which their business operated, their goals, their desires, those sorts of things. So that's where we created what we called a business diagnostic. Some people call it needs analysis. but where it was a series of questions, and I'm actually going to do another session on this another time, a series of questions that took our customers on a bit of a journey, and it allowed us to get closer to them and find out more information. So we gave them a meaningful solution. But the point of that story is it was the start of us defining the way in which we sold and our process. And then, of course, the methodology piece, which is where we defined our tactics, where we needed to succeed. So it was quite exciting, and while, we sold, as I said, we sold well. We were probably quite tactical selling. Most of us loved the hunt and the chase. But as I've sort of learned, it became a bit of a show up and throw up, which was tell everybody about how wonderful we were and all our amazing products. And, oh, by the way, you should buy something, as opposed to really getting their buy-in and, making that long-term sticky relationship as opposed to a tactical relationship. So that's kind of where the methodology thing started really kicking in for me. And as a result, certainly in the last 5.5 years, done a lot of thinking about it. The things that I've observed is that it's really hard to scale an organization without a defined methodology. Why? Because it's hard to train new team members. It can be really messy and messy for their start. And tracking conversion rates at each sort of stage is very vital to growth. So you know where your team needs to learn and develop a little bit more. And also teams speaking the same language. When people are away and someone says, oh, it's at the investigating stage, or especially if it's defined inside your CRM system as well, and some people have Salesforce or whatever CRM system you have, it's great to have the methodology talking the same language as what is in your CRM. So when you're away, people actually know where the sale is at in the sales cycle. So that was something that I've definitely observed over the years has really helped businesses. And also too that when we take a lead and we take them through a process and close them in a really methodical way, it makes a whole pile of sense to the customer. So when you get to the end and we are asking our customers to close, in fact, we probably don't even really need to, because if we've done the dance right through the methodology, it feels so natural for the customer to actually just buy. And so I don't like any surprises at the end when I present something to one of my clients, because they should know exactly where I'm leading with this, because I've taken them on a proven methodology that I am constantly even refining my own methodology to make so it feels really natural for them at that point to buy. As I said before, it makes it easier to onboard new team members, and it helps existing team members, help them through all the different phases that they're going through when we've well defined it. Interestingly enough, the most successful companies that I've worked with don't have one. And, one of the things, as I said before, I'm all about betterment. And so that's taking companies from good to great. I don't work with startups. I don't work with turnarounds. I work with good businesses that want to become better. And then so many companies, nationwide companies, that don't actually have a defined methodology. And interesting that my last lesson in the last 8 months, and this comes back to that recession piece, in the last 2007, the last 8 months, I have been asked to do more and more sales strategies and sales methodologies. So what does that tell you? Things are tough again, and that people are, they've spent so much time with their costs, and some of you would have already been through that with your businesses where we're really nailing down our costs. Well, now it's time to get positive and think about how we can generate more revenue. And we generate more revenue into a business by making sure that we have this well-defined methodology and process, and everybody's following it. So just to kind of, that's a little bit of background, how I kind of got here. And some other things that I'm observing in this complex market, because here we are again in another bit of a recession. Some say we're in it, some say we're coming out of it, some say it hasn't even happened. Wherever you're actually at in it, there's no doubt that it is a complex market. And these are some of the things that I'm observing as as I get around clients around the country. This is stuff that has been going on, right? And you'll see down the bottom there, there's a lot of fatigue in sales teams, especially if there's been costs cut. There's people that have, now had to be doing the job of more than one person, which can, so sometimes the leaders and teams get a bit burnt out. The level of competitors and the tactics they're playing, there's a lot of race to the bottom in some industries. You know, price cutting, you know, deal size changing, you know, but there's been a real lack of focus, in my opinion, on actually generating sales. In recession times, companies get so excited about cutting costs, and yep, that's a factor, but they don't put any time and value into their sales teams to grow and develop them. What gets cut first? Generally the marketing budget, then the training budget, then the marketing budget, right? And that's how sales teams evolve. So it's really important to understand that maybe some of you are going through that right now, but that's certainly something that I'm seeing in these complex markets as we go through them. You know, for a long time, people have been saying, oh, selling is so hard, selling is so hard. But I don't know about you, but so is buying. People have made it so difficult to buy. And it fascinates me how what used to be so simple has now become quite tricky in something. And think about the last time you went to buy something. There's so many different messages. There's so many different options available to us that we are, you know, we're just constantly in messages of marketing. But so think about how you actually sell. Is it easy for your customers to buy from you? Don't know. Something to think about though, right? For me, it's about that selling in a way that a customer wants to buy. So if you think that your customers are finding it hard to buy from you, think about your model, and this is what we're here for today. And again, that re-engineering some of those personal selling styles. You know, there's been some salespeople that have been around for 100 years, right? Me included. And, you know, sometimes we just need to stop and think about how we can re-engineer our own styles into more interactive, consultative type selling. And more what I'm seeing, and I've got a little slide to show you next, is people rely on relationships. And when you rely on relationships, it isn't actually the strongest way to sell, right? Relationships are important, but adapting your selling style so it resonates with your customer. And again, making sure that we've got that methodology to be aligned exactly what your customer's desires as an outcome. So more about what your customer wants as opposed to the way you want to sell is the message that you'll hear me continually talk about. This comes out of some research from MBIE in the US, and I had one of my favorite books called The Customer Sale. 53% of people buy because of the sales experience, right? This was 5,000 businesses and about 20,000 businesses and 5,000 sales consultants were surveyed. And, you know, 19% company brand price service delivery, 9% price ratio, but 53% of people bought because of the experience that they had through the sales journey. So, you know, that's that dance I was talking about before. That's how you make people feel. We remember that, you know, we all buy because of the way people make us feel, right? It's nice that the things do the things that we want to do, but how did it make me feel? The product, how did the person make me feel? So it's something that's really important to remember, that our sales process impacts on how people buy from us. So we need to make sure that it's a remarkable experience. If you haven't read the book, I'd highly recommend it. Here's another scary statistic. 68% of people leave because your customers don't think you care about them enough. What I call perceived indifference. Perceived indifference being that you thought you were caring enough, others didn't. I don't know when the last time was you lost a customer. Take a second to think about that person. You know, yes, there's a whole lot of other reasons why competitors go away, but some of the easiest customers I had back in my early sales career, I lost them. Why? Because I got complacent. And I thought because they just spent with me month in, month out, and, you know, they always seemed happy, they liked me, we had a nice relationship, all those sorts of things, I felt that they were as sticky as anything to me, but they weren't. Why? Because I didn't give them a really good experience. I was just really nice to them, probably, or maybe not. But think about the customers that you've lost, and ask yourself honestly why you did lose them. Thought I'd give you a little bit of history of the old selling. Now, of course, you know, pre-1900s, there was a lot of chickens going for timber or whatever it might have been, you know, barter, barter, barter. Some people still barter, and it's nothing different to the way we actually sell now. You know, around the 1900s, the insurance companies, you know, obviously that was what was the turn of around the automobiles, was finance and insurance was what made people able to get into a motor vehicle. But then the insurance industry discovered that if they actually got a few more products, they could upsell people, which is, in my opinion, where the fries first, you know, do you want fries with that first came from. And then as time evolved, these insurance companies and other businesses had been out selling, and they decided then all of a sudden they needed somebody to look after them. And that's when some genius thought up the old farmer hunter. Don't know who that was, but that's when that came into play, working with people who could keep them. In 1925, there was a great revolution around the psychology of selling, and some interesting stuff, articles and books were written around that. And that brought in the concept of handling objections, closing, and then the features and benefits, and how we started to do a bit of that dance. You want that, I've got that. And then Neil Rackman wrote this amazing book in the 70s, which really started to introduce the consultative era. And then in the 80s, we had this whole purchasing thing changed, where we had, you know, people became more, buyers became more interested in how they were being sold to. Purchasing took a bit of a change, and we started to really get into this cost benefit thing. In the 2000s, the tech came. Most of us threw our hands up in the air, and still are, around how tech works, and CRM systems came into play. And then the dreaded admin functions started to come in for sales teams. And most of the salespeople that used to just love to hustle and go, all of a sudden had to fill out some paperwork, and it tipped a lot over, which was a real shame, because some great salespeople didn't survive the admin era. But now we're still in this interactive, consultative selling phase, in my opinion, and I think that's where we'll stay for a long time. That's that, you know, teaching our customers different things, tailoring something that resonates with them, taking control of the sale in a really challenging way. Yep, so it's not just about relationships anymore. It's about us making sure we are interactive with it. So that's just a little bit of history. It's always just kind of interesting to know how we evolved and where we actually have got to. And I always say this, it does not matter what, and there's this great argument often in organizations where there's production or design or whatever it might be. Oh, you can't do this without me, and I can't do that. Yep, there's no doubt we're a team in this, but nothing happens until a sale is made. Nothing. So it's really important to understand that, and to have your team understand that. So that's kind of just a bit of a feel of, you know, how what I've seen and what I've observed, and, you know, some of the reasons that have got me to make sure that companies that are building a sales strategy build a methodology that sits underneath it. So, you know, what I'd like to do now is, well, that's a bit grainy, sorry. What I'd like to do now is just take you through this whole methodology piece around how we grow up and scale our business. And I guess this is why you're all here today. So why a methodology? I mean, you know, closing more deals is obviously a reason why we actually want to be here, and you know, helping them move more deals into a closed phase. Some customers of mine really find that their sales process is just too long. It's a lengthy cycle, and they have areas in their business where their customers just drop off because the sales process has just gone on too long, and the customers weren't sticky enough, and that through that sort of phase, maybe where they've signed a contract before they can actually close. I see it happens in real estate a little bit, and so it's helping create that good methodology to keep people engaged. Structured methodology helps sales reps better tailor and understand what their customers want, which of course leads to that great sales experience that everybody's looking for. And by having a nice, clear framework really does help take people through that process, as I've said before, but it helps teams increase their win rates. Why? Because they can get really specific about what they want to get better at, and I'll show you how to do that a bit later on. And some really good visibility for sales leaders. And I know some of you are sales leaders, and so having that methodology wrapped into our CRM system, it really does help us accurately forecast what's coming in, what's coming up ahead of us. And if we know the phases that our methodology, we move pretty quickly, so our quick wins are in there, then we know that where people are likely to move on into the next phase and we're likely to get the sale, or whether in an awkward position where we need to kind of help them through it. So that's kind of why we need a methodology. And what I'm going to do now is just run you through some examples of some methodologies that I have seen or help implement. So these are some pretty standard ones that I've seen. I know one person on this call will recognize one of these. The 5 Ps down the bottom there. But, you know, generally, as you can see, look, there's nothing earth-shattering here, right? So you find a person, you make some contact, you discover the proposal, present, close, and renew. Pick, probe, propose, prepare, plan, prospect, discover, present, close, follow up. All very similar, right? These are the process, remember. These are some other ones. Cycles that go through. Some people call them cycles. Some have a process. You'll see that they all kind of follow the same thing, right? And interestingly, in a lot of them now, we have this handling objections coming in here, which is really important. This one here, I've just implemented with a company, and this was completely aligned to their CRM system. It was quite a large piece of work to actually do that, to get it to align. Because, of course, it's all very well to define the process, but then you've got to define the methodology and tactics underneath, right? So the words are easy. So that's just some sort of examples to the process that people take their teams through and their customers through. So for all of you, those words will mean different things, right? So if we come back here to this one, don't get seasick. This first one, this top one, that's mine. So for me, I find people and I call them suspects. I suspect I might call them one day. So there's a big long list of people up on my wall over here. And when I've made contact, they become a prospect. That's what happens. So I've got to have made some sort of contact, not leave a voicemail, but some sort of interaction with them. Then I go into my discovery phase with them, which I like to do belly to belly, which means I'm in their presence, but often it's just face to face, whether it's Zoom or actually meeting them. Then I go through the proposal phase, which is a lot of time spent in my discovery phase, re-looking at what I've learned and known. In my discovery phase, most of my customers know what my proposal is actually going to be. So when I come to present to them, they're pretty aware of what the price is. They're pretty aware of what we're going to do. I don't put any surprises in there for them because we've been completely aligned on the way through. I do throw some extra tools and tricks in underneath the proposal at the end of it, because there's always a, do you want fries with that? And then, in my opinion, I should close easily from that, although sometimes there's some negotiation around objections that they or their team might have. And then I'm always looking to renew. I love recurring revenue, and I love having people work with me every month. So that's actually my process. So it's pretty simple. So you can see how simple it is. Now, obviously, underneath that, there's some tactics and things that I work through. So now you've kind of got a bit of an idea of how some people run at it. What I want you to do now is I want to run through the steps to a good methodology, right? So first of all, the first thing you need to think about is you need to think about a team who could work on that with you. who are focused on betterment, because it can't just all be the leader of the organization, right? It's got to be inside your team, but those that are really want to make this work for you. So, you know, when I did this, I made sure that I grabbed in 2 or 3 of my team, and we worked on some of the things that would make us, you know, go faster, make the boat go faster. But first of all, you've actually got to define the current process, because you'll have one. It'll be there. So what you need to do is look at what you've already got and then define it. So sometimes it's just wrapping some keywords around it. So you'll remember back in all those other ones that I believe the most successful ones have the one-liners, and then they have stuff that sits underneath that cascades. And then underneath that, that's that piece that you use. So the piece under the process is defining the methods you've used in the process. So that's your tactics and your strategies. And then you create a bit of a framework of the findings above. Now, what I mean by a framework is that we have the high level, that we can then start to sort of stretch out all the different phases. So what I want you to do now, because information without action is just interesting, I always say. So here's your action. I want you to write down the stages you go through in your sales cycle, right? Even if they don't make true sense to you, just write them down now. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes just to do that. And if you're quick at it, you'll see some more instructions on the screen. So under each stage, what are the activities that you or your salespeople do in this phase? And then the last piece, and in my opinion, this is the most important one, and it is a step that when I get inside businesses, I discover they've got this lovely process, but they did not do this stage, which is right under each stage what the customer is feeling or doing in this stage. So I've given an example here. The customer is feeling unsure about the large purchase they're about to make. They've seen so many different options and it's really confusing. So the customer is likely to be in an evaluating phase or an objections phase. So you kind of define where they might be. And the salesperson should have reevaluated their needs assessment to remind them of the objectives they were trying to achieve. And then the salesperson might be acknowledging or handling the objections, right? So it's understanding the connection between what the process is, where the salesperson is in that process, but where the customer is. Because when they get misaligned, that's when we can't sell them anything. So taking ourselves up and out onto the balcony and going, where are our clients at in this phase? How are they feeling? And most of you probably, some of you would have, but most of you probably haven't really thought about lining your methodology with how the customer is feeling. Remember what I said before? Selling is hard, but so is buying. So just take a minute, you know, don't have to do them all, but just under a couple of those, just write down how the customer might be feeling. Okay, so hopefully you've got a bit of a framework starting to take shape there just by thinking about some of those things. Just as a wee aside there, you'll see down the bottom around acknowledge and define their objections, handle, not answer. Anyone that's done any work with me will know that I've got a real bugbear about people answering objections. If you head to my website, I've got a wee white paper on it, which you should download and grab. Because I'm a great believer in using acknowledging and defining as a little bit of as a handling of objections, so making sure that we're showing empathy and understanding as opposed to just answering people's questions. So that's what that means at the end. If you wanted to know that, you'll find that on my website, that handling objections on the Sales Suitcase website. So now comes this big piece of teams skills, and as you go through and ask yourself each of these, I want you to kind of think about how your team stacks up on the skills, right? Because an interactive consultative sales approach has all of these activities, and this is kind of what goes into, and not limited to, all of your sales process. Just give it a minute to have a bit of a think about those and have a read through. I won't do death by PowerPoint and read them to you. How do you know if your team's stacking up on these skills? You're closing more than 70% of your sales proposals. You'll see there the fourth from the bottom, knowing how to confidently close a sale. That's the easy part if you've done all the right steps. If you are not converting sales, you have missed steps. You have not taken your customer on a journey. You're not following a process or a methodology. 70% should be a minimum of a closure rate. Yeah, I'm often amused. I turn up to clients and they go, oh, we're doing pretty well. We sort of close 35% of our business. Well, you should be able to trip over 35% of your business, right? If you've got a good product. So yeah, don't be too proud of that one. Make sure that, you are around the 70% of closing your sales. I'd be really keen to know if anyone is closing around 85 to 90% of their deals, then, what are you doing here? No, of course you're here for betterment. So these are all the things that, you do need to include in it, right? So now we did the first steps around that. You'll see the top three there. So we talked about those sorts of things in that slide that we built a bit of a framework, right? So now we've got our group of people together. We've defined sort of the process. We've created a bit of a framework on those findings that we've found above. And I know you've got a lot more work to do on that, but for the purpose of today, we're just going to keep going through it. So then the next thing is to discover what the salesperson's role is in all of it. And we started on that with how people are feeling. But the next thing is what the prospect or customer's role is and what the salesperson's role is. Now, what does that mean? What it means is that what they should be doing at that time. So, things that they need to be thinking about, how we can align next steps with them. So remember to keep a sale moving forward. I said earlier that, sales consultants need to take control and keep the sale moving in next steps. So sometimes it's giving the client some homework. Sometimes it's the sales consultants going away doing some more work. But where is everybody at? What is their role in it? And what other things need to be done at each of those phases, right? So that's the last sort of piece to actually padding all of that out. Now, there is also some other little tactics and bits and pieces and amongst that you would want to be, discussing with your team. And so, I'll give you some examples. So in mine, in my contact made, and when I'm making my initial phone call, I have what I call my marshmallow bulldozer speech, which I know somebody on this call has heard it. And so it goes along the lines of, so this is under my contact made. Oh, hi, it's Di Murphy calling from Intentional Influencing. We bring people's potential to reality. We've never met before. How are you today? I give them a very brief moment to actually answer me. And then I carry on. And then I do what is called my brick, which is my business reasons for calling. The reason I'm calling you today is, and I reckon that takes me about 20 seconds to get all of that out really fast, right? How do I know this? Because I used to sell medical insurance to people when I was 22 and I was really bad at prospecting and I had to learn to get better at it. And that's how I got better at it, right? Cold calling and I have a real love-hate relationship. I'm still not that fond of it. But I found that if I got really confident, that I could then, I got more, because all I needed to do was get in front of people. If I could get in front of people, I seemed to sell, but getting in front of people was tricky for me, right? So I created my little marshmallow bulldozer script, and every single time, this sits on my computer, by the way. It's always there. And the other thing that I do before I call somebody is I write out a list of objectives of what I want to actually achieve in that call. Get the appointment, define roughly where they're at in their sales process, whatever I put in there. I have objectives before I call absolutely anybody. So that's the kind of stuff that I have in my contact made piece, right? And then, some of the stuff that I also do prior, I have another little tactic that I call the AAA. So when I'm working out if a prospect is worth my time, I need to kind of make sure I can get access to the decision maker. Without the decision maker, I can't sell them. Can they kind of afford what I sell? And could they afford the time? Some people that are owner-operator can't afford the time, not necessarily money. And do I align to what their business works for? There's some businesses I won't work in. And so do I align to that, and do they align to me? So that's just sort of some examples of the granular space that I go into in my methodology. But I don't want to tell you too much because I want you to be able to work out some of those tactics because you already have them, right? And then, you share them with your team because that's the next thing you do. You communicate your initial findings with the team of what you and the other team have come up with. And then you reconfirm the methodology once you've had that team discussion. So remember, those that make the plan don't fight the plan. So it's important to actually get everybody on board with that. And then we start communicating the methodology. We align it into our CRM system or Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever it is that your Pipedrive, whatever it is your CRM system you're using, align the steps to that, right? So we don't drag them into another phase in our CRM until we've aligned that with our methodology. And for those of you who maybe you're in a role that you can't make those decisions, then I would suggest that you have a pretty good discussion with your senior leaders around if they want to enable their salespeople, get the CRMs or the Salesforce or HubSpot, whatever it actually is, get them talking to your methodology. And if you don't have a methodology, maybe you need to create one and push it up into your senior leaders. Then the next thing, of course, to do is to train the team to that methodology. Now, some won't necessarily need training from end to end. Some might just need some coaching in between to that methodology. I'm a great believer in that not all salespeople would need this sort of training, but they definitely need some coaching. And of course, the last piece is being the keeper of the methodology. You need to lead by example. So you need to use the same words, the same language, whatever it actually is. You need to, as the leader, be leading by example and ensuring that everyone is using this methodology. It's I've an old saying, the fish rots from the head, right? So if those at the top, those that are the keeper, are not doing it, then it'll just die. It'll just die away, and it won't become embedded into your organization. And and that would be a true shame. On that note, how do you embed it into your organization? I'm a great believer in rolling out change. So we want to talk about through those steps there, those last sort of 5 or 6 steps there. That's how we're going to communicate the change. It's really important that we give a why to why we're actually doing it, right? Sales, there's nothing drives salespeople more crazy than someone just putting something in and going, we're doing that because, well, this is the way we're doing this. Head office has told us we have to do it that way. This is how we're doing it now. Nothing drives a salesperson more crazy than that, right? We need to know why. And what do we need to know? How it's going to affect us and why it's going to make our role better as salespeople. Salespeople can be a little, kind of self-absorbed when it comes to when we change things. Why? Because it generally affects their income, and so they should be concerned about it. So that's why we've got to roll it out in a really meaningful way. Ask for feedback when we've rolled it out. So, what do they think of it? Probably first lick, you'll probably get, I don't even know why we need to do this, or they don't like it, or whatever it might be, right? But remember, if we've communicated well and we've talked about the why we're doing this and the purpose behind the methodology, they should get used to the idea. Then it's practice, practice, practice. So every of those things, in the discovery phase, remember I instigated that needs analysis that went in there, series of about 25 questions that we put in there. We had to practice how we ask those questions, because nobody wants to sit and listen to someone who's reading off a bit of paper, as boring as anything, right? So we had to find a way to interactively ask those questions. In the closing phase, we did things around how we aligned up with what we talked to them about to what we were going to present. So when we came back, we were actually presenting exactly that. So we had to learn how to ask alignment questions. When it was in the objection phase, we had to learn how to teach the team how to handle them, not just answer them. So all of that stuff, practice, 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 practice. And what sales rep doesn't love a good role play? None of them. Anyway, so then we've got to coach the team. We've got to keep coaching them. And that's where our one-on-ones come into play. How are you going with the new methodology? What are you struggling with? What more do you need to know? And then after about 3 months, then again in about 6 months, then again in about 12 months, we review it, we gain feedback, and we reset it if it's necessary. I would not recommend changing the words, but sometimes we just need to put some more stuff in there. We need to bulk it up a little bit more, put a few more tactics in there, put a few more strategies, put a few more trainings, put a few more ideas, coaching, brainstorming sessions inside those methodologies. And remember, everything in strategy is iterative. What does iterative mean? It means we can go, here's a general direction, we're going to try this out. Now, it doesn't mean if it doesn't work, we're going to change it, right? We're just going to update it. We're iterating it. So, it doesn't have to be set in stone. So we go away and tattoo our 6 steps of our methodology on our arm, right? Let's not do that just yet. We keep updating, we keep growing, and then we reset again every single time. Make sense? It's as easy as that, right? So, one of the things around motivating salespeople, I've always said encouragement plus support plus celebration equals motivation. We cannot motivate our people, right? It doesn't work. It's got to come from in. Motivation is intrinsic. So we've got to offer encouragement, support, celebration, motivation. So when we're putting in this methodology, this is the stuff we need to wrap around it. We encourage them to embrace it. We support them through it. We celebrate when they get the wins. They feel motivated. Make sense? And also for some of you who worked with me before, you'll know my love of accountability. When there is no consequence for poor work habits and behaviours, and no reward for good work habits and behaviours, there's no motivation, right? You're the keeper of the accountability of the piece of this. So we have to make sure that we create good work habits, and we need to make sure that people feel endeared to them. So that's the run through the methodology. Are there any questions from anybody? You're welcome to put them into the chat if you wish. From anybody, though I've given you an awful lot of information this morning, so you're probably like, can't even think what to ask. But if there was any questions from anybody. Okay. So then if you want to know more about being a sales leader, you can obviously reach out to me. But as you know, I have an online training program. Or some of you won't know. A lot of you will know. Hang on, I just think I might have a wee question come in there. Great, thanks. And so the sales suitcase for salespeople and the sales suitcases for sales leaders, they're two totally different courses. So they're available on the Sales Suitcases website. You'll get a link to it down the track anyway when I send you a recording. But I'm offering a 30% off for those attending the webinar today if they want to go through the Sales Leaders or Salespeople course. But of course, if you want to reach out to me, I always love to hear from people directly. I really, really encourage you to share your methodology with me. I'd love to see it. And love to help you in any way that I absolutely can. But just before we finish up, we've got just another couple of minutes. I want you, oops, sorry, I just lost that chat piece. I want to know what you're going to commit to, and I'd love you to share it with me. You don't have to share it on this, but if you're going to commit to something, I'd welcome an email or even just a direct message in the chat. But if you don't want to share it with me, it's absolutely fine. And I want you to write down the one thing you'll change as a result of this webinar. Now, it may not be your full methodology, you might have it, but there'll be something that you'll need to update and do differently as a result of it. Remember, information without action is just interesting. And I don't want you to leave today without changing something. Okay. Hey, thanks so much for joining me today. I'll let you know when it'll be next month when the next sales strategy series comes out. And so hopefully you can join me then. Hopefully you got some value out of today. As I mentioned, in a couple of days, I'll be sharing the recording with you and a link to those courses. And also you'll have my email address if you want to just reach out and say hi and share your methodology. So thanks so much for joining me today. Have a fabulous day. And remember, nothing happens until a sale is made.
Thank you, Di.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Di.
Thank you.